So we left off on Wednesday talking about validity, reliability, and power. However, I failed to get one of the slides finished, the observations slide, so I'm going to clip that into the beginning of this lecture. So if it confuses you when I start again after this slide, that is why. So, after we've determined if we have reliability, power, validity, then we have to determine how we want to make this observation. So we've determined how we want to measure it and what exactly we're measuring due to our operational definition. But where do we want to measure it? What answers are we trying to seek? Do we want to know how this behavior occurs in real life, or would we like to just know overall encompassing whether or not this behavior actually does occur, and if so, how does it occur? So there are two options really when you're looking at forms of observation. And the first is a naturalistic setting. And this is just an unobtrusive observation of people in their natural environment. So hence the term naturalistic. And as with anything in psychology, there are advantages and disadvantages to a naturalistic observation. First, one advantage is that it allows you to get a realistic picture of how behaviors actually occur in a naturalistic setting. So they're not clouded by this idea that you are in a laboratory and that you should act in some specific way. They also allow you to remove the observer effect. So this kind of goes back to what I just said, is you don't want to act a specific way when you'll act differently when you think that you're being watched. And so in a naturalistic setting, the observer can actually step back and observe from a distance where the participant or the person being observed doesn't actually know that they're there, so they're not modifying their behavior in any way. Disadvantages of a naturalistic setting, and there are more disadvantages than advantages, but it's kind of, you have to find the lesser of two evils, is that not everything can be observed in a natural way because not everything occurs naturally. So if you want to determine how someone will react when they're put in an aggressive situation, then you're going to have to put them in an aggressive situation, and that might not occur in the environment, but we can make it occur in a laboratory. So that's a downfall of naturalistic environment. Another thing is that some things must be discovered through direct interaction. A lot of things, you may need to know financial history or demographics of a person, and you may have to ask them questions specifically, so you will have to have that interaction that you couldn't have in a naturalistic setting. And then another is that you can't control your environment, and that brings up a lot of difficulties. So if you want to observe, how much time a person spends outside, a simple observation, and you follow them around on a day that it's 75 and sunny, and then the next day it's raining because you can't control the rain, you're going to get a lot of variability in your results, in your data. And so other people may not be able to replicate, because you can't control the environment, other people that are trying to do this study may not be able to replicate this study because they can't rebuild the environment that you were observing in. So, in order to overcome some of the disadvantages of naturalistic observation, laboratory observation was developed. And in this case, you can control the entire environment, everything from the temperature to the distance that people are seated from each other. Absolutely everything you can control in this environment, or at least 99% of the things. And so there are bonuses in that, but the negatives are that these demand characteristics come about, these aspects of an observational setting that cause people to behave as they think that they should behave. So they're like, okay, well, I'm in a laboratory and it's, they're trying to determine my level of aggression, so I shouldn't show too much aggression, or, I'm going to look like a way aggressive person. And so they'll kind of change their behavior to better suit what you're looking for a lot of the times. Observer effects are not can come about in this as well is that you don't act the same when you know you're being watched. And so in that case, they often will use some sort of participant observation where you have one-way mirrors. You still know you're being watched. This works better with children. So children, may not come to the conclusion that there's someone on the other side of that mirror. But obviously with adults, most people will say, okay, I get it. I'm still actually being watched. And so it won't actually overcome those observer effects. And then finally, something that clouds both of these types of observations and that is really difficult to get around for both of them is an observer bias. So this is listed under naturalistic, but should also be listed under laboratory, is that oftentimes it's also called a confirmation bias, and oftentimes researchers will ignore information that contradicts their biases and their personal opinions, or if it contradicts their hypotheses, they will ignore this. So that's one of the reasons the scientific method was developed, is to overcome this. But it's also that you could expect to see something, and the way that you interpret your observations could account for that. So, for example, placebo drugs, if you're to tell someone, hey, this drug will help you, and it will a lot of times, even if it's sugar, because you've already told them that it's going to. And so that can help you overcome your expectations. But both of them have their ups and their downs, their pitfalls. Some other techniques that you could possibly use would be cover stories. If you bring a participant in and you tell them that the study pertains to something entirely different than what it actually does, then maybe they won't try and change their answers or their behavior on this other component, this other concept that you're actually looking at. Filler items, this happens a lot in questionnaires. You'll include other items to, once again, it'll throw the participant off and it'll make them think that you're looking at something that you're not actually looking at, so that they answer the other questions more truthfully. Double-blind observations. This happens a lot in medical studies. If they give a pill to someone, they don't want to think that they're seeing results in one group when they're actually not. And so they will make sure that both the researcher and the participant don't know which is the placebo and which is the actual pill, and it's a third party that has nothing to do with the study that actually knows which is which. And then we mentioned participant observation by observing from a different room, possibly using a video camera too. And then physiological measures. This is a good idea. You can't control physiological measures. So if you want to look at fear, as we talked about in the last class, you could use pupil dilation or sweating, something that is out of the control of the participant, that you could use as a measurement in order to determine that, so that they can't throw you for a loop. It's just cold, hard physiological facts.